When the looting starts, the shooting starts. That is the message which must be conveyed to the anti-fascist mob if peace is ever to be restored to the streets of America. Now, a bit of that message was conveyed, I think, last night, though I don't think it really brings us much closer to peace. Sadly, I think that the events in the town that I have been corrected in the pronunciation, called Kenosha, Kenosha, Wisconsin, those events have brought us further from peace, but it is an inevitable escalation, an unavoidable escalation, which had to happen eventually, because the police, so far over the past few months, have failed to convey that very important message that I opened with, that when the looting starts, the shooting starts. People have been allowed to loot and to riot and to vandalize and to burn down buildings, burn down cities, burn down car lots for far too long. And that's why every week or so things get more violent. The riots intensify because they become more emboldened, because people start to realize that there are just no consequences. And so they start to do more and more extreme things. And finally, that awoken within the hearts of many civilians in this area, the motivation to do the job that the police refused to do. And that, of course, was to try and protect private property, to defend these businesses that are being torched, and eventually, once they get to it, defend the private homes of the innocent people of Kenosha, Wisconsin, and potentially other cities. Because remember, they're not just vandalizing and terrorizing business districts. They have, at least in Portland, been marching through neighborhoods, bullhorning and trying to wake people up so far, getting on people's property. In St. Louis, of course, you had that couple, the McCloskeys, who spoke at the RNC. These people broke through the gates, through the walls of their neighborhood, and marched through private property. And now in Kenosha, what do we see? But people not only marching through residential areas, but firing off fireworks at their houses, which, you fire off fireworks at some of these houses. You can set it on fire. Is it a guarantee? No, it's not the same as throwing a Molotov cocktail through the window. But if you've got, for example, pine needles or any sort of dried foliage on the property, fireworks are going to start some fires. And of course, it's terrifying if you have dogs or children, or if you're just a normal person who's not used to being under attack. If somebody fires fireworks at your house, if a mortar explodes outside your window. And this is the kind of activity that the police in the area have refused to put an end to. This is the kind of activity that only the vigilante groups are standing up against. And so that brings us to the main event of last night, the news that I woke up to upon checking Elijah Schaffer and Andy Ngo's Twitter feeds. And that is, of course, the 17-year-old young man or boy, depending on how you want to look at it, who gunned down 3 rioters, 2 of which you can see very clearly attacked him. Very cut and dry self-defense. He was, trying to walk towards the police line, and the two of the people involved in the riots came from behind and tried to attack him. He shot, killing one of them, but that was after an initial altercation in which he shot a man in the head, in the side of the head, I guess. Really, really hard to watch if you look at the video. I don't think I'm going to link it below, but you can find it if you go to Andy Ngo or Elijah Schaffer's Twitter. And I'm sure other people who are covering this also have the video. The video is just about everywhere. They're not showing it on TV, of course, because, they don't, on TV, they don't like to show people with holes in their heads. But the footage exists, and it's gruesome. And that man was someone who was trying to replicate what happened a couple nights ago on the first night, I believe, of the riots in Kenosha, to where they had torched a car lot, set every car on fire, burned the place to the ground, and destroyed the entire business. And this is a part of the militias who had showed up for this. They were committed to defending private property and making sure that these sorts of incidents aren't repeated. So this kid walked up to these people who were attacking these cars and trying to destroy them. And there's video of this going on before. This guy, sort of a pasty white guy, skinny type of guy. And I'm not trying to say anything nasty about that. That's just a description of his character. He was not the only one there. There were other people who were involved in the destruction of these vehicles. And we're not entirely clear. It's not entirely clear to me, what led up to him being shot. But according to Elijah Schaefer, who I believe was at the scene, who did record this firsthand, the rioters shot first at this kid, which would make sense to me because there are cycling around now many interviews from before the incident with the kid because of just people who were out in the field, saw him with a gun, wanted to talk to him about what he was there. He did not seem like someone who was going out to just kill people, although you don't know. I mean, he's 17 years old. He could be prone to fly off the handle. He is a minor, so he's not at 17, even if you're 18, you're not exactly making the best decisions in the world. That's not an age that's associated with making the best decisions. But, this is still unconfirmed, but according to what we've heard, there were shots fired by the rioters at this kid, and so he shot back and killed this one guy. I don't think he didn't hit anyone else while he was at the car lot, but after he shot this guy, the guy went down. You can see the video of him dying on the ground. It's not very pretty. But after that, the 17-year-old kid rushes away, trying to find so he can turn himself into the cops, and I guess start the process. I assume he doesn't consider himself to be a murderer, but you still have to, go through the police after you kill somebody in order to clear your name. And the police are so far away that this kid has to walk a real long while to find any cops. And along the way, he gets chased down by by a bunch of rioters, but these two who directly attack him, he shoots, killing one of them. The other one, he just sort of blew his arm apart. Guy had some big muscles, and they were shredded. Again, not something pretty to look at. I don't like when people get shot, believe it or not. This sort of stuff is, even though it was quite foreseeable as far as I'm concerned, I'm not surprised that we're having all this violence in the country, considering everything that has gone up, all the tension that was boiling up under the surface. I still don't like to see it. I don't like to be proved right about these things. And so here we are. The moment is upon us. The moment in which ordinary Americans, even though this kid was a minor, have started to fight back against the mob. And the mob is feeling a bit of pain. I think that this is a crossing of the Rubicon, so to speak. A point of no return. It is an unfortunate turn of events, but it's something that I have been expecting for a long time. You can't just keep poking a sleeping bear and expecting it to never wake up. The right wing in this country is armed, and if forced to defend themselves, they will. And of course, by nature, the kinds of people who respect private property and entrepreneurship and small businesses, the petty bourgeoisie, tend to be people of the right, people who own guns. And even though this kid will likely have his life ruined over what he did, although I very much hope he has a good lawyer and can fight this in court, because I think there's a good case to be made that he did absolutely nothing wrong. I do think that he did a very necessary service, because somebody has to stand up for ordinary people in this country. The police refuse to. All the footage that we see of the police are around the police station or the sheriff's office. I'm not exactly sure which, but it's whatever building that this law enforcement agency, because I know that both the sheriff's office and the Kenosha Police Department are involved with all this. They were circling the wagons, so to speak. I guess literally, they were driving around in their armored personnel carriers in a circle around their building. They had a big fence up, and that's really all the footage you see of the peaceful protesters clashing with the police. You don't see the police trying to stop looting. The police let all that go on. Nowhere where you see looting going on do you see police officers trying to intervene. You only see the militiamen who are not openly antagonistic to the BLM people. Far from it. A lot of them are sympathetic because they are, you're more libertarian types that are not exactly fans of cops to begin with. So they're not exactly out there as back the blue type of people. These were not your 3%er or Oath Keeper types, I don't think. Although who knows, maybe the Oath Keeper types are less sympathetic to police than your average right winger. I'm not exactly sure, but most of them, well, actually, I mean, Oath Keepers by definition are ex-military or police. But my point is that these militiamen were definitely on the libertarian spectrum. They were not just vanilla right wingers. But of course, the mob doesn't know the difference between that. I've used the example in the past, I believe, of Rand Paul's 2016 presidential campaign. He tried to be friendly with the left. And the result is that the left hates him more than the average Republican senator. That's generally my attitude when dealing with the anti-fascist mob. There's no reason to try to appeal to them. They're going to call you a Nazi no matter what. This 17-year-old kid is being called a white supremacist, with no grounds, of course, because almost nobody is a white supremacist in 2020. They just don't really exist. But, it'll be very interesting to see what happens tonight. Because either, there was a situation in South Africa during the very rapid wind down of apartheid, in the prelude to I believe it was the 1994 elections, which were the first ones in which all residents of all of South Africa voted in one election instead of having elections for the main government and then all the Bantu stands and stuff. And it was, sort of the last stand of Botswana, which was one of the Bantu stands. The government there, the leader of the government, did not want to give up power. Did not want to surrender to Nelson Mandela and dissolve the Bantu stand. And there were a lot of white South Africans from, the AWB, which went into Botswana to try and defend it. Eventually, they stood down and retreated, or rather, I believe they were asked to leave. And they did so, and, in the process of their retreat, one of their cars got separated, and three Afrikaners were killed. And this was during a time in South Africa where there was a lot of civil unrest, and there was sort of boiling tensions underneath and a lot of violence in the streets and things. And then finally, these three guys got killed on live television, and, you saw them bleed out. And that it was an important moment in South African history because for a lot of people, they looked at that and they saw, whatever we're trying to stop, it's not worth this. And people got scared and they quit. And the tension very much was swept under the rug after that. And so there is a possibility that after, people look on TV and they see, well, they're not going to see it on TV, but if they look on social media and they see these three guys who were a part of these riots, again, remember the number 3, shot, and 2 of them killed, in some rather gruesome images that ordinary Americans are not used to seeing. It is possible that would give some of them pause and say, what we're doing, is it really worth all this? And, they might just disperse. But I do not think that's the case. I don't think that's the character of your average left-winger in America. I don't think that's the character of your average right-winger in America. I don't think that is how Americans are in 2020 in general. I think that people are going to see these images and be emboldened towards, whatever their side was to begin with. Obviously, the people who have been decrying all the looting and been, crying out for someone to do something about all this looting are going to be happy to see a rioter, finally, met with justice, or I'll just say it, finally happy to see a rioter shot by someone defending private property, and are going to cheer on this young man. And just as many on the left are going to call him a murderer and say that, we need to have even more riots now. Even though I don't believe any of the people that this kid shot were actually black, it's kind of an interesting detail. Doesn't matter to me, but, you would think it mattered to the left. So I guess that's a maybe a bright spot of this is that if he had shot a black guy, the riots would be 10 times worse tonight. But I'm interested to see if perhaps you see less militia folks come out who get scared and say, "Oh my gosh, one of us actually, did what we said we were here to do." I'm not really comfortable with this anymore. Maybe it'll finally start to feel real, and these guys will regret going out and say, "You know what, I'm not going to do that again," and stay home tonight, which would be unfortunate. So I'm not really sure yet what's going to happen. I don't know how serious these militia boys were, the Boogaloo boys. Perhaps seeing one of their own, apprehended by the police, and seeing that he actually did have to follow through on his promise to protect private property, maybe that will discourage them. And another element that's going to be different tonight, I don't know if it'll have an effect tonight, probably not, but Trump says that he's sending in the feds, whatever that means. I don't know if that means FBI investigative resources, or if that means people to, well, I don't think there are any federal buildings in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But no matter what, I mean, that might change the perception for a lot of people. People might now associate, what's going on in Kenosha with Trump, and that could embolden more people to go out. I just don't know, but I do expect things to be at least as bad tonight as they were last night. I mean, the strategy of escalating to de-escalate normally doesn't work out that well. Normally when you escalate a conflict, you do just that. You escalate. You don't scare people into de-escalate. Because it's not like this was a massive leap to get from where we were to, rioters getting shot by militiamen. That was sort of the next logical step in the escalation. And so now, the next step after this would be greater organization on both sides, and perhaps, clashes not just between an individual and, a bunch of rioters in the streets, but between groups and rioters in the streets. So with that said, I will keep my eyes peeled tonight to see what exactly happens in Wisconsin and I guess throughout the rest of the country. And if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.